Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with a new video. I took a week off. I was a little busy. My girlfriend came over, but without saying too much, let's get right back to it. Watching a video about Jake Paul and his boxing career. So without saying too much, let's go.
Alright fellas, now Jake Paul is always in and out of the news. Yet since the Mike Tyson fight, which was almost half a year ago now, there hasn't been any official announcements surrounding what's next for Paul. There's of course been talk about Canelo, and talk about Tank, and Anthony Joshua, but is any of this serious? Well, I reckon Jake Paul might...
I'm sorry, but Jake Paul is getting mopped by Canelo. First of all, he's getting like literally mopped. There's no discussion in that fight. Like, it's gonna look so bad. And against Tank, he's also getting mopped, realistically. But like against Canelo, that shit is gonna look so bad, bro. So bad that it's not even worth watching. That's even worse than him versus Mike Tyson.
might have some seriously major problems with finding his next opponent, and he might be on a road that none of us really expect. But just before we get into what's next, my name's Cloister and I make boxing videos to keep you informed, so make sure to subscribe and I'll always keep you in the loop. Now, Paul vs Tyson, if you loved the event or despised it, it was unfortunately one of the biggest boxing promotions of 2024 and will probably go down as one of the biggest of the decade. A massive spectacle and certainly the biggest Jake has ever been a part of. Off the back of Tyson's name, this bout has certainly propelled Jake to a complete other level of stardom. Already, Jake was a well-known name to anyone who'd watched YouTube for a while and is known to most in the boxing world. Yet because of him getting in the ring with Tyson, now he had solidified himself in the minds of a bunch of different generations who wouldn't have paid attention to him otherwise. All of this is pretty impressive, saying that after his loss to Tommy Fury, it appeared to have stopped his whole hype / hate train facade in its tracks. But since then, he's managed to rebuild and schedule fights which has brought his brand back to life. And now his name and brand is debatably as big as it's ever been. Now, I've certainly been a vocal critic about Jake Paul in the past. Simply put, I thought the Tyson fight was a disgrace. But because of his careful choosing of opponent,
It really was a disgrace. Like, when I watched that fight, I just had a feeling that this guy was gonna win because he's Mike Tyson. But bro, there were so many health complications going on with Mike Tyson. He still took this fight, and Jake Paul is so wrong for taking this fight against this old man who was going through all these severe body issues, and that's just fucked up.
he's ended up building a name in which he's one of the biggest figures in combat sports, if not sports as a whole. You just can't ignore him. Like, if 12 months ago I told you that Jake and Canelo were gonna fight, you probably would have laughed at me, but it almost became an actual reality. In the sport of boxing, what makes money makes sense, and if these fighters are being offered almost 9 figures for what would be an easy night's work, they're absolutely gonna take it. That's why we almost saw the Jake Paul and Canelo fight happen. The rumour is the only reason we didn't even see it happen was because the Saudis threatened to pull Canelo's 3-fight deal and they would have had to pay him 9 figures just to fight William Skull. And they did this because if Jake fought Canelo, it probably would have ended up, sadly, a bigger spectacle than Crawford Canelo. And the Saudis don't like to be overshadowed. So Canelo then was off the cards, at least now for a couple years. So then where do they turn next? Well, if you can't get the biggest name of boxing, you go for debatably the second, that being Gervonta Tank Davis. I remember watching the PB stream for Tank Roach, and the second I saw Paul there, I knew he was only there for business. In what would have been a Logan vs Mayweather 2.0, you would take the two enemies of the Riyadh season stable and put them against each other to generate one of the biggest spectacles possible in the sport. Yet Tank obviously ended up drawing against Roach, and the thought of this fight had been put on hold. Tank had a certain aura about him leading into this fight, but he was exposed to be a lot more human than most of us thought. Jake Paul going against a Tank coming off a draw isn't the best for promotion, especially when there's already such a massive weight disadvantage for Tank. So whatever deal was there seems to have been cancelled, and Tank seems to be rematching Roach in June or July. So Jake has struck out.
It's good for Jake Paul if that fight don't happen, because I'm telling you, he's gonna get knocked out. He probably won't get knocked out. We'll be in the clause that Jake Paul can't get knocked out. Well, let me fix this. But he would definitely lose. Bad. Like, bad.
Trying to get 2 of the biggest names. Where does he go from there? Well, most recently he called out Anthony Joshua to a fight, with rumours of it taking place in 2026. This seems to be the most ridiculous
Why not in the
yet.
summer? Like, why not do this fight or at least in the winter, like November or something, October. But damn, 2026, you need that much more time?
Jake Paul took a punch off Joshua. Let's be honest, he probably wouldn't get back up. Well, also, the thought of Jake Paul having to fight a true heavyweight is pretty hilarious. I couldn't imagine Jake at that weight doing much better than, say, Ngannou. It's almost like a death wish. But with all these fights, a loss is probably what they're planning for. They obviously know that going into these fights, the best they're going to get is they're going to get bashed around for 8 to 12 rounds and lose, and the worst could be Jake being knocked out cold. Yet the whole point of having one of these fights is so Jake Paul can say afterwards, well, I got in the ring with Joshua, Canelo, or Tank. What has every fight Jake has had so far been trying to achieve? Every fight is trying to legitimize him. If he gets in the ring with, say, Canelo, it further legitimizes himself as a big name in sports and as a boxer. He doesn't want to be remembered alongside the rest of the influencer crowd. Jake doesn't...
And I wouldn't want to be either if I was Jake Paul. It's the smartest thing in this career, basically, to separate himself from the KSIs and all these other goofy YouTubers. He created a whole nother lane after being the, like, what's it called? Figure, like the main head of YouTube for a long time.
Doesn't want to be remembered like a butterbean. He wants to try and be remembered as somewhat of a legit boxer. Although any of us who have lived...
Which won't happen. We will not forget about Team 10, and it's every day, bro. That's just not going away. You could grow that beard, but that's not changing who you is, my boy.
Through this Jake era would say otherwise. He's doing his best to try prove us wrong, or at least leave somewhat of a legacy. Although all of his opponents have been way past it, or have had a severe handicap, at a glance, his record looks not too bad. And he plans to continue this facade. His next move is clear, get a big name in the ring. That's his company's main priority. Whilst his name is at its peak value currently, they want to ensure he gets a big money fight against a big name. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's willing to take a major layoff to do so. 12-month break, and then later in the year he finds himself back in the ring against Tank and AJ. But if he can get a major name is his major problem at the moment. I don't know if he can actually pull it off. Out of all the rumoured names, the only one I could see him actually fighting is Tank. And why is that? Well, he's the only fighter at the moment who can't be persuaded by the Saudis. And Jake has a massive weight advantage. Out of all these rumoured fights, this one makes the most sense. It definitely doesn't make boxing sense, but it makes money and entertainment sense.
You need to take that Yankee hat off. You was not from New York, bro. You were from Baltimore. Bro, you were from Baltimore, Maryland. I don't want to see you wearing a hat.
And that's what drives these bouts. Money. But if he doesn't end up managing to get a big name, or even if he fights one and loses, I think Jake Paul will eventually end up fighting for a world title. You might be asking, what division? This can't be true. Bridgerweight. He's gonna end up fighting at Bridgerweight, probably for a title. He's hovering around the weight already, and almost all the fighters in this newly created division suck. Tyson Pedro, ex-UFC fighter the other week, beat some high-ranked Bridgerweight fighter in his first ever boxing fight. The competition isn't great. There are no big names in this division, and any sanctioning body would leap at the chance to collect some sanctioning fees by letting Jake Paul fight for a belt. That could either be against Chavez Jr. or a previously mentioned Tyson Pedro. Paul wants to win a world title, that would shut everyone up in his mind, even though like most things in his career, it's kinda BS, but he would still be technically a world champion. And the sanctioning bodies already seem kinda keen. And let's be honest, the debate about him and KSI is now irrelevant. His levels of...
Yup, him and KSI will never be on the same playing field on a boxing level. And it's proven, bro. KSI wants to fight like former soccer players, and this guy's fighting. You can say what you want, but they're fighters. At least in other sports, they're still fighters. This man wants to fight a fucking soccer player. What? Jake Paul is clearly better than him. They should never even fight. If he fights him, it almost brings him down. It's not worth it at all. He's definitely the A side in that situation right there. And I don't even fuck with Jake Paul like that, but you gotta call a spade a spade.
Above the likes of KSI, at least in terms of opportunities. KSI's main goal in the sport is to fight Jake. For Jake, here's some of the biggest names in the sport willing to fight him. KSI has to pray that Turkey sets him up with something good, or will be stuck fighting Danis and Bridge for the rest of time. At this point for Jake, the KSI fight is an absolute last chance bout. If everything else goes wrong, there's always this fight against KSI. For KSI, that's really the best fight he could get. Even though I would like to see this fight, I would be surprised if it ever happens. For Jake, now his major challenge is securing a major name for his next fight. Their whole goal is to have a fight which will be as much of a spectacle as the Tyson fight, which is a pretty hard feat to try and achieve. To try and sustain a Netflix deal, he has to fight someone big, and for the moment, only time will tell who that truly is. But now let me know what you think. Who do you think is next for Jake?
I think next is gonna be Tank Davis, just cause Tank is a money hungry ass nigga. Yeah, like and subscribe. Thank y'all for watching, and I am out. We should have multiple videos up, or at least one tomorrow as well.